Alright students, welcome to the channel of Ignited Mind Tutorials, and today we are going to start with one of the first poems that you have for Maharashtra State Board English syllabus. That's Where the Mind is Without Fear, and this has been composed by one of the most renowned poets of India in Bengali language, and that's Ramanujan Tagore. Okay, we associate with him every morning when we actually happen to sing or rather follow the national anthem that is being sung in our schools. It has been composed by him. All right, so he has made significant contributions. In fact, Indian poetry is zero without him. All right, he has it's not only Indian poetry, but I would say in the entire world forum of poems, his poems have actually made a significant contribution. His poems have vivid descriptions connecting nature, connecting human emotions. He has not only made contributions by just poetry, he has made contributions by painting, he has made contributions by being a dramatist, he has made contributions by writing short stories, he has made his contribution by being a novelist. So there is no, I would say, a form of art that has been left untouched by him. He is one of the geniuses of India, and obviously has made significant contributions. He has picked up very simple things in life and has actually made a significant contribution towards the freedom movement of India as well. His writings have been recognized and followed by many leaders of the nation to inspire people for freedom. Okay, so basically Rabindranath Tagore, if you look at it, he was born in Calcutta. His reign was from 1861 to 1941. So majorly the period was when the British Empire was ruling India. Okay, so most of his poems will actually in some form or shape, or most of his works in some form or shape will actually instill a feeling of patriotism, will actually imbibe and inspire people to rise up for their nation. Okay, sorry. So he was fondly known as Gurudev. He has actually established an open university, or rather a renowned university named Santiniketan, and that's located within the frontiers of Bengal, in which it's a completely different way of education. And there he is fondly remembered amongst all Bengalis. He is fondly remembered as Gurudev. Okay, Gurudev basically means a person who is the most noble teacher. So he was not only a writer but also a painter. There are many paintings of his, a philosopher and a composer. In fact, all his songs, he has actually composed them in terms of the music as well. What would be the rhythm of those songs and all that, that has been written by him. Okay, so a painter, a philosopher and a composer. So he's also a kind of music composer. So if you see, there is no actually no field of art that has been untouched by him. He has made a significant contribution in all of these fields. Okay, he reshaped Bengali literature, not only Bengali literature but literature as a whole. Okay, he reshaped Bengali literature and he received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913. Nobel Prize, as we all know, is the most prestigious award, or rather would say the highest recognition that one can receive in his or her particular field. Okay, whether you are a poet, a scientist. So he was the first person to have received the Nobel Prize for Literature in 1913 from India, from Asia, and he was also the first non-European to receive it. Okay, he was the first Indian, of course, first Asian, of course, and a non-European as well. Okay, he won this prize for his collection of poems, Gitanjali. Okay, it's still a huge volume of a book, and it has been translated, and the translated name is Song Offerings. So as we can correlate, Geet Anjali, okay, it's like an offering of songs. Okay, these are basically poems that have been composed by him. The best of his poems have been compiled up in his book Gitanjali, and for this he won the Nobel Prize. Okay, he made significant contributions as a poet. As I said, he was a versatile personality. All right, he made significant contributions. Mostly he is known for his poems, mostly he is known for his contribution in poetry, but then he has also made significant contributions as a dramatist, as a novelist as well. So this is uh, India is, I would say, the most renowned person in terms of art. Okay, his songs, if you look at it, the song that we have, the national anthem for India as well as for Bangladesh. He is the only person who has composed songs for two different countries, India and Bangladesh. The songs that are there as national anthem in these two countries have been composed and compiled by no other than Gurudev Rabindranath Tagore. Okay, so to put it in simple words, his significant contribution is kind of impossible. It's not that his words can be put into significant contributions. Almost all Bengali families are aware of him. They are aware of his poems and all. So he built a culture in himself. Okay, he was not only a poet, but he imbibed, he inspired, and he built a culture in himself. Almost all Bengali families have been acquainted with some form of his work or the other. Okay, so again, at that point of time, when India was going through a very rough patch, when the confidence of people was down, when they were being ruled by an imperialist nation of England, and we obviously, it's not only that we were being ruled by the Great Britain as an imperialist nation, we were almost on the verge of losing our identity. Okay, the struggle has been too long. 200 years means a huge amount of time, and India and the Indians had almost lost their identity. His inspirational poems, his deep insights into those poems have helped people to come out of their dark phase and make significant contribution not only to the freedom of India, but also after after the Britishers left in developing India. So his poems, for the first, they are not only his poems are not only contemporary, they are almost universal with time. Okay, they are just not for that specific time period. If we pick up any of his poems, we can easily correlate to our present times as well. They are applicable to all times. I mean, this is just not restricted to the dimension of present times or contemporary times, but it's just, you pick up any of his poems and you read it out, you can feel it at any point of time. So his contributions have been, more or less significant beyond words. And we are going to actually read and understand one of his poems, which is there in your syllabus. And of course, this was written when the Britishers were ruling India. So we are going to understand the context of this poem, and we are going to understand the fine meanings and all that stuff. So we are going to cover this. This was about Rabindranath Tagore. You can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, so we will go more into the poem. We discussed about Rabindranath Tagore as a poet. Now we are going to discuss about the poem itself, which has been composed. Okay, so this poem basically has been composed by Rabindranath Tagore. It is taken from the collection of Gitanjali, which was composed around 1910. It's a collection of poems. It's a huge volume of a book, and this is poem number 35. Okay, poem number 35, Bengali. In Bengali, it is known as Chitto Jetha Bhoy Shunno. It's one and the same thing. See, Chitto means here the mind. Okay, where the mind is, Bhoy Shunno. Bhoy matlab fear. Okay, so Chitto Jetha Bhoy Shunno. This was the Bengali poem that was written, and it's translated into the English language. So Tagore himself read out the English version of the poem in the Indian National Congress session. There was an Indian National Congress session at that point of time, which was framed in order to fight out the British. Okay, and he himself read out the English version of the poem in the Indian National Congress session that was held in 1917. So if we look at the background of the poem and the way in which the poet has inspired the poem and put across to the people, it is to uplift the confidence of the people, to bring them back to their identities, to make them realize their worth, and to make them, or rather to inspire them to fight for their freedom and to live a life which would be fearless. Okay, so this is the inspiration. This is what the poet is trying to instill in his Indians, in his own countrymen, or rather Indians. Okay, During his address to the Indian Parliament, the poem is so famous that US President Barack Obama has quoted the lines of this poem, okay, when he addressed the Indian Parliament during his tenure of being the President of USA. Okay. Now, to get a glimpse of what the poem is all about, it is written in the form of a prayer. This poem is basically in the form of a prayer. It's as if the poet is praying to God to instill in his countrymen the idea of fearlessness, to instill or to rather visualize a country which is basically wherein no casteism would be there. Everybody will be able to acquire knowledge freely. So it is written in the form of a prayer to God. In the same, it is although written in the form of a prayer to God, but it is written with the purpose of inspiring people, okay, for the freedom of his country, So basically by this prayer, which is putting it across to God, the Almighty, he is actually trying to claim the freedom of India and his people. So he visualizes a country. He has very effectively put across a prayer so that it can transform the minds of his people who have lost their identity by being under an oppressive rule of the colonizers for a long period of time. He visualizes a country to be free of the oppressive rule of the colonizers. We know that the countries like France and England were colonizers. They were imperialist nations, and obviously we were under the British rule at that point of time. So Britishers were the colonizers, we all are aware of that. He imagines a nation which is free and where people are fearless. Now here the term fearless doesn't mean that you do anything. Okay, the term fearless means that you have a freedom of choosing your own life, okay, freedom of making choices, and that's one of the basic things of humanity. We should be fearless that to make a choice in every sphere of life, how we live our lives, the best of it. We should be, that's his idea of being fearless. Being fearless here means that we should be having a free will to live our own lives as per the choices that we make in all aspects, right from our standard of living, right from choosing things in life, right from choosing relationships to choosing knowledge streams, okay, all this, okay. So all this, we should be fearless of that, okay, and that can only happen if we are independent. So automatically, although he has not talked about independence, but he is indicating that only. Okay, he has visualized his country as a place where knowledge is accessible to all. The second thing that he visualizes or envisions for his country is that the knowledge should be available to all, which means that there should be no differences in caste, color, creed, wealth, etc. for imparting knowledge. People should be knowledgeable. The more we are knowledgeable, this is basically, human resource is the most, I would say, it's not my saying, but human resource is the most fundamental resource that can be made available to a country. So if we develop human resource, automatically the country will develop. So human resource knowledge is the most crucial factor of human resource development. Education is the most crucial factor of human resource development. What the poet transpires here, or what the poet confesses here, is that knowledge should be made accessible to all without any discrimination of caste, color, race, religion, or even wealth. Okay. So we will continue with more of his ideas that he has tried to convey in this poem. Okay. So you can take a snapshot of the same. Okay, so we are going to continue with the summary of the poem. Okay, what is the poem trying to visualize by means of this poem? The poet visualizes a nation. He is actually visualizing a nation where people are truthful, that is, they do not have any malice in their heart. They have a pure heart, and they are truthful about things, okay, truthful, and they should constantly strive for perfection. Constantly strive for perfection, it means that there should not be any, they should not be keeping themselves aloof, or rather they should not be doing any form of they should always be striving to get perfection. If I am to put in the same words, they should always be striving for perfection, which means that they should work really hard and they should be determined to achieve what they have thought for. Okay, so this is primarily due to at that point of time, if you look at the mindset of people, by being under a colonial rule for almost 150 years, obviously if you are working under somebody for such a long time, I mean generations have passed and people are under the British rule for such a huge amount of time, they were almost on the verge of losing their identity as Indians. They were almost on the verge of having a life which can be called a life. Okay, so that's what he's trying to instill. So if you don't have that confidence, okay, if you don't have that inspiration in you to live a dream or to live a life of your dreams, then obviously your efforts will not be for perfection. Your efforts will just be to fill the gaps. Okay, if you know that this is how life would be, being subjected to the torturous rule of the colonizers and living a very average life. Okay, so no place for dreams, no place for education, knowledge, whatever they say you have to do that. So obviously for generations we have been doing that, and by doing so obviously our confidence had gone down. So what he's trying to portray here is that let's gather ourselves up and let's strive to achieve that perfection. Whatever we have dreamt of, let's achieve it to a perfection. Okay, so that's what he's saying. Be truthful, and they should constantly strive for perfection. Work hard to get that perfection. Get that determination, gather yourself up and get that determination to achieve that perfection in your in your work. Okay, so the reason why we were not inspiring for perfection at that point of time is because we were under the colonial empire for a very long period of time, under that torturous rule, and we had almost lost our identity at that point of time. Okay, so he's trying to imbibe all those qualities in his fellow countrymen, that we need to kind of get up, gather ourselves and inspire to achieve that stage of perfection which we had at one point of time thought in our minds. Okay, he also imagines a country that's not broken into fragments. Now obviously in India we know that there is a strong difference in terms of caste. Then we have racialism, linguistic differences, although racialism is not that predominant in India. Okay, but at that point of time it was, because the Britishers considered themselves to be superior in their color. Okay, casteism, of course, at that point of time it was strong. It is gone a little weak now, but not eradicated yet. Okay, linguistic differences, which means that differences due to language and all. So India is a diverse country, so obviously we have different form of religions, castes, different types of standard of life, feeding habits, linguistic differences. So all these are different things, and what he's saying is, although we should acknowledge all of them, but we should not get divided by all of them. So that is also woven very craftfully in this poem. Okay, that's not broken into fragments of casteism. We should not get divided by these things, which will rather make us weak than strong. Okay, he prays for his country's freedom and gives a presentation of his dreams of India. So he prays for through this poem, he is actually praying that his country becomes free, and he is also giving a presentation of the India of his dreams. Okay, so it's just not India needs to attain freedom, it's also that it needs to go out of its way and achieve a lot more other things that he is trying to portray in this poem. Okay, the poem has 11 lines in total. It is not divided into stanzas as we normally see in poems, but divided into meaningful segments. It has been divided into meaningful segments. As we write the poem and then we consider line by line, then we will understand better. It is just a summary of the entire poem. The poem is written in a free verse without any rhyming scheme. So Ramanujan Tagore has actually written this poem in free verse. There is no rhyming scheme out here. Okay, the poet sketches out the ideal form of freedom and not merely political freedom. That's going beyond. Okay, so in general, a lot of people think that it is just a poem wherein as contemporary to that that during those times Okay, so it is a poem to just inspire political freedom. It's not about political freedom, it's about something beyond that. Okay, it means it's just not achieving political freedom, it's human freedom as a whole. Okay, it's he is actually trying to attain a human freedom as a whole. Okay, when we have complete freedom of the choices that we make in our lives. Okay, so the poet sketches out the ideal form of freedom in his poem and not merely political freedom. So he's just not restricted this poem to attaining political freedom, but he is going beyond that. He inspires his countrymen to become truthful, have a progressive outlook. So he's inspiring his countrymen to become truthful and have a progressive outlook. Okay, so these are certain segments of the poem, now we will start with the poem by going line by line. This was the complete summary of the poem. So now we'll start with going line by line. You can take a snapshot of the same, as you would need these points in order to write your answers. Right, so now we will come to the actual poem as it is, okay, and we will go line by line in understanding the vision or the thought of the poet out here. Okay, so what Rabindranath Tagore says, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. Okay, so he imagines a nation, where he starts with where, which means of course the nation of his own India. Okay, he imagines, of course his idea is not restricted just to India. Okay, his idea is restricted to all the nations which were a victim of the colonial rule or which were under the imperialistic rule at that point of time. There were a lot of nations which were either a part of some colonial empire of the European countries. Okay, so where he primarily means India, but it is also universal. Okay, where he imagines of a nation, the mind is without fear, any fear, fearless mind. Here fearless mind means that it should not be subject to a limitation of choices, okay, in life. It should not be confined to do something else. It means that a mind which can make his choices or make his or her choices freely. Okay, so it should not be a mind which is contaminated with fear. It should not be a mind which is dominated by fear. Okay, so without fear means fearless. It doesn't mean that you just do anything. It means that your mind or your decisions in life or your thought process should not be impacted by anything which is above you. It should just be impacted by your free will. Okay, every person, every human being should be able to think on his own free will. He or she should not be impacted by any kind of peer pressure, all right, just for out of fear. Okay, so he should be able to make his own decisions in life and move ahead, and the head is held high, and the head is held high. See, obviously at that point of time we were under the colonial British Empire and we were just following their orders, whatever they are. So we were more or less all slaves, okay, a kind of slaves. So our head, so obviously we know that slaves are people who are not having their own free will. They are dominated by others. So where the head is held high, we should be holding our heads high with pride, with honor, and with dignity. Okay, so that's what he is imagining his countrymen to be fearless and to be holding their heads high with pride, with dignity. Okay, without any feeling of remorse or without any feeling of being a slave. Okay, the head is held high, free, where knowledge is free. He imagines of a nation where knowledge is free. Now what do we mean by free? Free doesn't mean that you don't have to pay for it. Free means that it is irrespective of caste, color, creed, everything, irrespective of any impacts, irrespective of caste, color, creed, okay, or even gender. Okay, so all these are basically discriminations which can happen in the imparting of knowledge. Okay, so at that point of time, people who were wealthy and people who were basically from a high society had access to knowledge. Not everybody did. Okay, so Rabindranath Tagore is imagining an India where people can acquire knowledge without any discriminations of caste, color, creed, etc. Okay, where the world has not been broken into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Okay, narrow domestic walls. What do we mean by this? World has not been broken into fragments. Broken into fragments means that it has not been divided by, again, the agendas of caste, okay, or by religion, okay, whatever differences can be, creed, gender. The world has not been divided by all these, which means that we should have a very broad outlook for life, okay, which means that people in a country should not have a narrow-minded approach, okay. The world has not been broken into fragments. The more we are inclining to our own thoughts or belief systems, okay, or even, to things correlated to caste, color, religion, creed, the more we will be broken. The reason why Britishers were able to rule for such a long period of time is obviously because India lacked unity. India was broken into fragments. At that point of time, it is not only religious fragments, it is basically, India was divided into many, people in India at most of the times were not even aware who is ruling, okay, who is in the central authority. They were not even aware that India as a nation exists. There have been extracts of some interviews that were conducted at that point of time, in which people living in remote areas were not even aware that they are a part of a nation. Maybe they are being ruled by some Nawab, or maybe they are being ruled by some, they were princely states at that point of time. So they thought that this is their region, okay, this is where they belong to. They were not united as a nation, okay. So obviously these are also fragments. These princely states that were there, these were also small fragments. So people were divided infinitely. People were divided infinitely at that moment of time. There was so much of divisions already of caste, color, creed that existed, and on top of that there were divisions of these princely states as well. So we had a very narrow-minded approach. We thought as if our state, or this princely state that we are a part of, that is all of India, okay. So a lot of people living in remote villages were not even unified with one thought, one India, okay. So that was the outlook at that moment of time. So he is saying that let's shun this, let's imagine an India, or let's reconstruct an India which will not be broken down into fragments by narrow domestic walls. Narrow domestic walls means that supposedly there is a family and there's a huge house, everybody is staying together. Now all of a sudden a fight or dispute comes around and everybody picks up a certain portion of that entire house and builds up their own walls. So that's how India was at that point of time, okay. It was divided by different princely states. It was divided by different ideologies, thinkings, okay, belief systems, religions. So this should not be the separation cause, okay. So he's visualizing an India which is not being broken down into these kind of fragments, because the more we have these kind of fragments, the more we will be divided, and the more difficult it will be to deal with any oppressive or suppressive rule, whether it is colonial or whether it is just an attack or anything, okay. So first of all, we need to be unified. He is talking more or less about the unity and integrity of the nation, where words come out from the depth of truth, okay. So people are truthful, people are fearless to speak the truth, okay. People are not timid enough, or people are free enough to speak up the truth, whatever they feel like, okay. Where tireless striving stretches its arms towards perfection, okay. Tireless striving, which means that we should be relentlessly trying, or rather we will say pursuit of perfection, pursuit of achieving perfection. So there should be just as we know that people who have achieved great things in life, they have been relentlessly striving to achieve this, okay. They have put thousands of hours of their life into that cause, okay. They have relentlessly strived, be it a sportsman, be it a scientist, be it a be it a doctor, be it an engineer. When people are successful in their lives, it means that they have put a great chunk or a great portion of their life into that cause. Okay, so that's what he's saying, where people in the country are tirelessly striving, whichever field they belong to, they are tirelessly striving, which means that they are not tired with their efforts. They are so engrossed in their objective, or they are so engrossed in their work that it's just that they do not feel exhausted about it. It's like a play for them. Okay, work becomes play for them. So tirelessly striving, which means that relentlessly they are striving to achieve perfection in their respective fields, whatever fields they are working on. Okay, so there is no exhaustion at all. They are not getting exhausted by their efforts. It's a tireless striving. Okay, see, you get exhausted when you are compelled. When you are working under your own free will, it's no longer something that would make you tired. For example, when you play, there is a constant involvement of your mind and as well as your body. But after playing, do you feel tired? Not that much, right? Being a student, if you study for 2 hours, you will feel tired, as if, because you feel that you are being compelled to. Okay, but if you play for 2 hours, it will not make you feel that tired. In fact, you will feel refreshed. Okay, the reason why it happens this way is because you are playing under your own free will. So that's what it is connected here. Okay, if we are performing things, or if we are doing things on our own free will, obviously the tireless spirit will come. We will not feel exhausted. You will feel exhausted if you are compelled to do something. Even if it is for 1 hour, it will add tiredness to your spirit. But if you are doing something in your own free will, it will be just, hours are just going by and you are doing your thing without getting exhausted or tired. So that's what he imagines, wherein life is basically tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection. So there's a constant striving, there's a constant driving force, and there's a constant enthusiasm to achieve perfection. Okay, so that's what life should be of his fellow countrymen. That's what he's imagining, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way. Okay, again, reason means rational. Okay, he is imagining a nation where people are not under their own prejudices. People are not making decisions under their own prejudices or on their own belief systems. Okay, belief systems which at that point of time India was actually going through, or rather there were a lot of creepy things that have popped up in the society. For example, the sati system was there, and sacrifices were there, various forms of sacrifices were there. So there were a lot of belief systems in the society which were not rational at all. Okay, so he is imagining a nation which is basically free of all these things. He is imagining a nation which is free of all these things, which means that it is a nation where people are thinking logically, where people are thinking progressively. Okay, where people are thinking scientifically. Okay, where the human reason, okay, when we believe in superstitions, when we believe in prejudices of our own, when we have our own belief systems, okay, which have no rational at all, then obviously we will be downtrodden someday or the other. Where the clear stream of reason, where he is saying that people are thinking logically, acting logically, and progressively achieving what they intend to. Okay, where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way, where the clear stream of reason is prevalent, where we are able to think rationally, where we are not compelled to take steps which have been taken by our predecessors illogically. Okay, where we have our own set of thoughts, beliefs, or rather there is no thought or belief, it's just a rational approach that we have. Okay, so he's imagining India to be like that, where people think on a rational way for all the things, where the thinking is very logical. Okay, it is not impacted or eclipsed by thoughts and belief systems of the past which have no rational at all. Okay, so he's imagining this type of a nation. Into the dreary desert sand of habit. Now what this dreary desert sand of habit means, it means that for a long time, since there has been a lot of practices, whether we call them religious or whatever, okay, those practices are absolutely irrational according to him, but they are in the society. Okay, so at that point of time, as I said, sati was there, child marriage was there, widow remarriage was abandoned. Widows were made to live a life which is, they cannot get remarried at all. Okay, they were supposed to live a life of more or less a saint, and then there was a caste system which was which was very strong and dominant at that point of time. There was sati system. So all these had crept up in the society in due course of time. These are not part of any mythology or any religious belief or stream. Okay, these have just popped up in due course of time. People have started believing them, and people were very strong in implementing them as well. He wants a nation which is free of all these dead habits. Dead habits mean very old habits. Dead means long time dead. Okay, very old habits which have somehow crept up in the society, which shouldn't have been there, but due to the narrow-mindedness of some people, and this has become prevalent in the society. Okay, whether it is kind of torturing the people of low caste, whether it is making their life hell, or sati system, wherein the woman has to kind of burn herself at the funeral pyre of her husband, irrespective of whether she wants it or not, post his death. Child marriage. Okay, there were many instances when old people used to marry females who were just 12 or 13 years of age, or maybe less. Okay, so these were things that were prevalent in the society. So he wants all these dead in India or Indian citizens to be free of all these things. Okay, all these dead habits, where the mind is led forward. So he wants a progressive society, a free thinking society, a society which can pursue towards its excellence with a free heart, okay, and relentless spirit. A society which can move forward, a society which can be progressive with a free thinking mind, with a free rational approach, okay, and relentless striving towards perfection. Okay, so that's what he has been dreaming of. So he is dreaming of he is visualizing a nation which is progressive in all aspects, into ever widening thought and action. So this is broadening as well as widening. Okay, thoughts and actions. So we are thinking of things and we are converting them into actions very smoothly. So there is, although there will be obstacles and challenges, but this is a nation which is moving in both in terms of its thought and action. People are thinking rationally, wisely, and implementing them into the actions, which is obviously leading the country to its development in all aspects. Development in all aspects. Basically, human resources development is happening on a very free way. Okay, into ever widening thought and action, into the heaven of freedom, my Father, lead my country awake. So he is praying this. My Father here means to God. Okay, so into that heaven of freedom, this will be a heavenly abode. We can make this country a heavenly abode. That's what he's saying. If we have a free rational approach of thinking, if we free ourselves from the colonial rule, and if we have a freedom of thought, we make knowledge available for everyone, free of any discrimination. We do not have any divisions of caste, color or creed amongst ourselves, then obviously this will be a abode of heaven. Okay, so into that heaven, my freedom. So lead my country. My Father, he is praying to God, my God, okay, lead my country to this kind of a freedom, and let everyone become awake to this kind of freedom. Okay, so this was pretty much about the poem, in which he is talking about how India should awaken and strive for freedom first, and then establish a nation in which people have a free access to knowledge without any discriminations of caste, color, creed, etc., wherein the country is not divided into small segments of, again, caste, color, creed, religion, etc. We are not divided by these narrow things. Okay, we are all one, and we are relentlessly, each and every one of us are striving really hard to pursue our dreams. Okay, to pursue our dreams or to achieve perfection in all aspects of life. Okay, so we have a clear, rational and logical approach to things. Okay, we are not kind of buried in our own old belief systems and irrational approaches. Okay, and finally, let this be a country of thought and action, rational thought and rational actions. Okay, which will definitely lead my country to the destination. That the heaven which he is visualizing, he is saying that if these are the things that we can imbibe in each and every one of us, then this will become a heavenly abode. rather than just a regional country, it will become a heavenly abode, and let God awaken all of us to this kind of a spirit, or to this kind of an approach. Okay, so that's what he meant. It's a very patriotic poem, and written in contemporary times, of course, but it is still relevant. The thoughts and ideas that have been expressed here were just not contemporary to those times. It is still relevant now as well. We are still trying to imbibe all these qualities, and we still inspired to become a country like this. Okay, so this was just not subject to the conditions that were prevalent at that point of time, but this is applicable to present times as well. Okay, so you can take a snapshot of the same, and we will proceed with certain more aspects of the poem. Okay, so we will now study some figures of speech, some elements which have been used in the poem. Okay, these are some figures of speech, and in what context they have been used. See, every poet, basically when he composes a poem, it is a little different from narration. Okay, so obviously he uses certain consonants, certain vowels, certain pronunciations, certain rhyming schemes in order to beautify the poem, in order to add rhythm to the poem. Okay, but here he has not added any rhyming scheme. So this is basically this poem is basically free of rhyming scheme. So we will concentrate on the figures of speech. Okay, now figures of speech, in order to create the poetic effect, okay, the figures of speech that have been used. The first thing is alliteration. We will see the examples of alliteration wherever it is. Okay, alliteration means the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning or adjacent or closely connected words. Okay, so it is either at the beginning or adjacent words or very closely connected words. For example, if we look at the first line, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high. If you look at it, here we have a W at the beginning. Okay, in the same line, another word W again is getting repeated here. Where, without. Okay, the sound of letters W. If you see H, head, held, high. Okay, so the sound is at the beginning. If you look at these words, okay, at the beginning of the word itself, the W is very prominently getting pronounced. Where, word, without. Okay, then we have head starting with the H, held starting with the H, and high starting with the H. So this is the first thing. Alliteration is the sound of letters of W and H that are repeated. So alliteration is nothing but the occurrence of the same letter or sound. Okay, I'll just create a divide here. This is the line that we are considering as an example. Okay, so the alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. These are adjacent words or closely connected words. See, it's in the same line. At the beginning of the word, we are starting with a W or a H. Okay, in the same way, we have something called as consonants. Now, what is consonants? It comes from the word consonant. We are having English alphabets divided into vowels and consonants. Okay, so consonants is basically the recurrence of similar sounding consonants in close proximity. Proximity means closeness. Okay, so similar sounding consonants. This is basically connected with the sound. Here we are connected with the alphabet. Here it is connected with the sound that is getting produced. Okay, so let's say consonants. If the sound of the letter, if you look at the first line, okay, the sound of the letter D, mind, and, okay, so the letter D has been repeated in the line. If you look at it, mind, then we have and, then we have D here, head, and then we again have a D, held. Okay, mind, and, head, held. Okay, so although the poet has not specifically used a rhyming scheme out here, but these are basically very influential in adding poetic effect to the poem. Okay, so here we see and, head, held. Okay, all these are basically mind as well. So the sound of the letter D has been repeated in the line. So that is pretty much evident out here. That's a consonance that is being used by the poet. Okay, now what do we have as metonymy? Metonymy is basically when the word metonymy is basically a substitute word. For example, any word that you have, if you kind of find out its substitute, okay, that can be used. For example, if you see mind and head, the poet means the same thing. Okay, where the mind is held without fear and the head is held high. It's one and the same thing, right? And whom does these things belong to? Obviously to the fellow countrymen or the citizens of India. Okay, so metonymy is mind and head. By both of them he is referring to the citizens of his nation, his fellow countrymen basically. Okay, so mind and head is basically referred to as citizens. Again, if we go to the next line, where the world has not been broken up into fragments, it's not the next line, but we are again using the example of alliteration. Okay, so where, if you look at it, the sound of W and B are repeated. So where world, okay, has not been broken up into fragments, W has been repeated, and again the sound of B has been repeated. See, been, broken. Okay, so the sounds, these are alliterations which have been effectively used to add the poetic effect to this poem. W have been repeated, so this is alliteration. Consonants, the sound of letter N has been repeated. If you again look into this, the sound of letter N has been repeated. N again, okay, where the world has not been, if you look at it, been, and again N here, again N here, quite a number of times you see that the sound of N has been repeated. Okay, so consonants, the word of letter N has been repeated quite a number of times. Okay, similar sounding consonants, world has not been broken up into fragments. Okay, again we have an N out here. These are similar sounding words where the consonant N has been constantly repeated. So these were certain examples of alliterations and consonants and metonymy. We are going to look into more lines and more kind of figures of speech that have been effectively used. Okay, you can take a snapshot of the same. This is very important in perspective for your examinations. Okay, so we are going to continue with more on the figures of speech. So we'll now more look at metaphor. What is basically metaphor? Basically it is indirect comparison now and the narrow-minded dimensions in the society. So by narrow domestic walls, if you look into this, metaphor basically means a comparison. Okay, metaphor here it means comparison. What he's said is by narrow domestic wall. Basically what he means by narrow domestic walls is the narrow-minded divisions that prevail in the society. Narrow-minded divisions of what? Narrow-minded divisions of caste, narrow-minded divisions of religion, narrow-minded divisions of creed, narrow-minded divisions of color, narrow-minded divisions of race, narrow-minded divisions of wealth. So all these are basically divisions that are there in the society. Okay, so these are narrow-minded divisions, discriminations that we make. Okay, so this is basically a metaphor. By narrow domestic walls, it's like a huge house that was there wherein people were living with immense unity. Now they have divided and set up walls against each other. So that's how it is. Okay, by narrow domestic walls, indirect comparison between narrow domestic walls and the narrow-minded divisions of the society. So he has compared the narrow domestic walls to narrow-minded divisions that we have created within our society, primarily India. Okay. Consonants, the sounds of the letters T and S have been repeated in the line. If you look into this line, where tireless striving stretches its arm towards perfection. Okay, so if you look at the S here, S again here, S again here, twice S here, again S here, again S here. So all these are basically repetitions of the consonant sound S. Tireless, striving, stretches its arms towards. Okay, so the word S has been, or rather the consonant S has been repeated quite a number of times. Again T has also been repeated. See, here we have tireless, stretches, striving, its, towards. Okay, so quite a number of times these consonants T and S have been repeated in this line, and hence it's an example of consonants. Okay, personification. What does personification means? When you basically personify an inanimate object. Okay, so any inanimate object, it can be any inanimate thing, it can be an idea as well, when you are basically giving a recognition of a person to it, as if it was a person, as if it was behaving like a person. So what he has to say here is where tireless striving stretches. See, tireless striving is basically relentlessly trying, as if the effort itself has been personified into a human being. tireless striving, which means the efforts that we are making, okay, that has been personified. An inanimate object striving has been given the human qualities of being tireless and stretching its arms, of being tireless and being stretching its arms. Striving means making an effort, okay. Here as if the effort has been personified to a human being which is basically gone tireless, that is not exhausted at all, and stretching its arms in order to attain its objective, okay. So you can make a note of this one while we move on to the next one. These are very important from the perspective of your examinations. Okay, more on the figures of speech. Metaphor, okay, we'll look into this line where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way. Again, reason means rationality, logical thinking, okay. The clear stream of reason has not lost its way. So basically, reason here is being compared with a human being who has not lost its way. So it's a kind of metaphor, okay. And indirect comparison has been made between the clarity of a stream and a reason. A clear stream, see, a clear stream is basically a stream which is clear, evident, it is flowing, okay. So not much of garbage has been collected there. It's a clear stream that is flowing. So just as we have a clarity, so the clarity of a flowing stream has been compared to the clarity of rational thoughts, okay. An indirect comparison has been made between the clarity of a stream and reason. So reason should be as clear as a stream, a clear stream which has been flowing. So here it is a metaphor, basically which is a comparison. So the clear stream has been, a clear flowing stream has been compared with the clarity of reason, okay. Personification is what? An inanimate object like the stream of reason, okay. It's an inanimate object, it's not a person, has been given the human quality of losing its way. So this stream of reason has been compared to a human being who has a possibility of losing its way. So here the stream of reason has been compared to it has been personified. The stream of reason, this phrase has been personified so that it is not losing its way, it's flowing in its same direction. The stream of reason has been given the human quality of losing its way, okay. Where the clear stream of reason has not lost its way. What it means here is that the clarity of thoughts is so predominant that it will not lose its way no matter whatever the circumstances are, okay. So it means that whatever are the circumstances in which we are living, the rationality, we should not lose our rationality to beliefs which are not rational, to systems which are not on the progressive lines of human development, okay. So here we are talking about clarity of thought and approach. So no matter whatever the circumstances are, we should always have a clarity of thought and approach and a rational lookout, so that we are not losing our way, okay. So again in the other line, into the dreary sound of dead habit. Into the dreary sound of dead habit, alliteration, if you look into it, the sound of letter D is repeated for poetic effect. See, if you see D here is here, the word D is here, the word D is here. So it is basically alliteration, okay. The sound of the letter D is repeated for poetic effect in this line. Metaphor again, an indirect comparison has been made between habit and desert sand. So if you look into it, dead habit and this is dreary sand, okay. Sand and dead habit. Sand is infertile, nothing new can happen in sand, right. Most of the lands which are desert areas full of sand, there is nothing that you can cultivate out there. Neither the vegetation is limited and so is the animal kingdom, okay. It is not fruitful to life, it is not favorable to life, okay. So dreary, not much of species can exist there, it is barren land. In the same way, the poet has compared the barrenness of a sandy desert to our dead habits, which means that habits or our beliefs or our prejudices or our thought processes which are not rational. So all these social systems which are absolutely irrational, that they have been compared to a desert sand. Nothing new can come out of it, no evolution can happen out of it, so it's dead, okay. So let's keep it as dead, okay. So that's what the poet has compared here. The metaphor here is the desert sand has been compared to dead habits. Dead habits means old belief systems without any rational or logic or any progressive thought process behind them. Okay, customs, religious beliefs, superstitions. Okay, all these are basically things which have no background of their own, and they are just there because somebody or the other has actually, or it has just crept into the society with passage of time. So that has been compared to the barrenness of a sandy desert. Okay, so that's the metaphor that is being, metaphor means comparison. So an indirect comparison has been made between habit and desert sand. Okay, so if we are sticking to old belief systems and illogical conclusions, then we are as good as comparing ourselves to the barren sand. Okay, you can take a snapshot of the same. We are about to finish with this. Okay, more on this poem, some more lines to be covered with more figures of speech. So what we are covering right now is basically figures of speech. Okay, so again we have metonymy here, where mind has been used to represent its close association with the citizen, where the mind is led forward by thee. Okay, in this sentence, mind is basically the citizen. Okay, where the mind is led forward by thee. So here the mind has been used to represent its close association with the citizen. Okay, with his fellow countrymen basically. Okay, so this is about it. Then we have apostrophe. What does apostrophe means? It's basically a direct address. Okay, apostrophe is when you are addressing somebody but that person is not present. Okay, so for example, we are saying a prayer or murmuring a prayer to God, but we know that God is not at least present in a form. Okay, so we are just indicating a prayer. So we are talking to somebody, we are addressing somebody, but that person is not present there. That's called apostrophe. Okay, in figures of speech. So apostrophe is basically here. What is the apostrophe? See, if we look into this line, into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. So the poet is basically requesting his father, or he is pleading or praying to his father. Here father means God. Okay, so into that heaven of freedom, let my country make let so many changes happen in my country that it awakes into a freedom and it awakes into a heavenly abode. Okay, with all the changes that he has talked about in the previous lines, definitely it's going to be a heavenly abode for its citizens. So that's what he has been requesting. Into that heaven of freedom, my father, let my country awake. Let my country become awake in that heaven of freedom. So again, we have personification here. An inanimate object, country, an inanimate object, country, has been given the human quality of waking up. Okay, so here this country awake. Okay, so country cannot awake, right? Country is not a person that he will sleep or wake up. So here the country has been personified. Okay, so that is called personification. So these were pretty much about the figures of speech that has been used by the poet. It's in itself a very inspiring poem. It's not just contemporary or rather only written during, or rather for those times only. Okay, it is basically prevalent and it has the same relevance to our lives as it was at that point of time. It is concerned with basic human things. Okay, here he is talking about freedom. Obviously we were not free at that point of time, but still freedom is just not getting yourself free from a colonial empire. Freedom is basically when you have the complete freedom of choices to make in your life. You are free to make the necessary choices in your life. That's called freedom. So even after independence, if even see, independence is basically something that we have achieved, or rather got from the Britishers who fled our country after their colonial the empire that was there. So that is not just independence. Independence has a deeper meaning to it, and that's what has been very effectively emphasized by the poet in this poem. He is expecting his fellow countrymen to be studious, to be hardworking, and to relentlessly pursue their dreams, to have free frame of mind in making choices in life. Okay, to be fearless in making their choices, and once they have made their choices, to be relentlessly striving to perfect themselves or achieving perfection or excellence in their pursuits. Okay, so that's what he has been expecting, and that's what his visualization for this country is. So again, a beautiful poem by a very astonishing and remarkable poet, and definitely it has very deep insights to what freedom is, what striving for excellence is, and as a student we have a lot to learn from this poem and inculcate in our lives as well. Okay, so hopefully this covers the entire poem. If you have any questions, clarifications to be sought, or any thing which needs to be explained and reiterated, please do mention in the comment section so that we can look into it and cover it up in the next slide, or maybe answer you there and then. Okay, very crisp poem, and we will cover more poems like this and more of studies like this by this online medium. So thank you again for watching, and let me know about all that can be covered extra on this one by posting your comments in the comment section. Okay.